Welcome to our first ever Mission Family Podcast. My name is Brandon Sarrigan. I'm the Generational Ministries Pastor here at Life Mission Church. And we believe that healthy families never happen by accident. They happen on purpose. And our hope in this podcast is to equip parents to pass on a vibrant faith to the next generation. And today's topic, we're going to talk about family values. And I want to encourage you after this podcast to get connected to our Mission Family Facebook group, where we're going to have some additional resources to help you as families create that healthy family. So let's get into today's podcast. I have two friends, Stephen and Michael. And growing up, Stephen's family was always yelling. There wasn't a whole lot of rules, and their parents were rarely home. And Stephen just kind of got to do whatever he wanted to do. And as Stephen grew up, he got in a lot of trouble. And I think one of the reasons is the family values weren't very rich and they weren't very much instilled. But then there's Michael. Michael's family was incredibly kind. Faith was a high value, and every member of the family kind of wore their last name like a jersey, like it meant something to them. And the depth of the values that they had as a family was rich, and it followed every single person within their family. And what we have learned is that the health of your family is a combination of what you create and what you allow. What we create is the traditions. It's the things that we do every single year, even within a given week. It's the values that we have that are said and sometimes unsaid. It's the rules that we establish or don't establish. It's the way that you treat each other. It's the things that we create as family that create healthy family. But one of the things that also affects our family is the things that we allow, the things that we tolerate, the things that we accept as normal, and the things that we don't create. And I'm wondering if we could do a more intentional job about the things that we create and the things that we allow to create healthy family. Because the number one thing that's going to shape the health of your family is its value. Because what we value determines what we do. And if healthy families never happen by accident, they happen on purpose. How do we develop family values that create healthy families? So we're going to talk about 4 steps for you to do to help create these families and instill them within your family. And the first one is this: define them. We want to identify what they even are. Second, we're going to communicate them. How do we post them in our homes in a way that's easy for us to see, for kids to see, and other people to see the values that we have as a family? And how are we going to instill them? Because it's one thing just to define them and post them on a wall. It's another thing for your family and for your kids and for your marriage to act upon these values and to know how to interact and when you're doing them well and when you're not. And then how do you evaluate them? How do you know if you have enough values? How do you know if they're the right values? And we're going to talk about all of these different things. But in the first podcast for October, we're going to talk about the first 2. Define them and communicate them. And then in our next podcast, we're going to talk about the instilling them and evaluating them. So the first one's define them. So I have a question for you. Determine honestly what you value based on what you currently create or allow. So imagine a scenario like this. Someone comes and follows you and your family around for a week. They go to your kids' school, they watch them interact in a classroom, they see the way they act on a field, or they follow you to work, and then they sit at the family dinner time, or they watch how you spend your time and your talent and your treasure. What do you think that they would say that you would value? If you didn't tell them your family values and all that they did was watched you, what would they say? Because I think for many of us, if that were to happen in our families, we wouldn't necessarily like the values that they would think that we had. And I think the values we'd want to say were true might not be the things that they said were true. So how do we connect between what people would say our values are and what our values actually are? So I provided a worksheet that's attached to this podcast that if you were to click on it and to follow this simple worksheet to do together, I think I can help you identify what your values are and to know how to communicate them. So I want you to invite the Holy Spirit to lead you. And that doesn't mean some fancy poetic prayer. It's just simply a prayer. It's saying, Holy Spirit, would you guide us as we go through this worksheet together? It's that easy. Next, I want you to determine if someone should join you. Maybe you're a single parent and you don't want to do this alone. So who's that person that could help you in the process? Or maybe you're going through this worksheet and you don't feel like you're gaining a lot of traction, or it's starting to create a little bit of conflict. Who is someone that you could bring into the process to help you articulate these values? And what about your kids? Should they be a part of it? Well, for me, I've got a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 10-month-old, and we chose not to include our kids in this conversation because they probably aren't there yet. But if you've got older kids that you want to involve within the process, do that. And there's not a right age or a wrong age. It's what's good for you. So looking at that worksheet, you're going to see a list of words, about 50 different words, and I want you to circle 10 to 15 of those. Now, you might have one that's not even on the page. Like, we had one where one of our family values is to follow Jesus. Well, follow and Jesus isn't on the page. So there might be a word or a phrase that's not there. And I want to encourage you, if you have a word outside of the words provided, write it down. Now, I want you to narrow that 10 to 15 down to 5 or 7. Why 5 or 7? If you give a lot of yourself to a lot of different things, you'll have given very little of yourself to anything. But if we were to identify 5 to 7 values that are really important to us, that if we got these 5 to 7 things right, we would be winning as a family. That's what we're going to do. So now that you've identified your 5 to 7 keywords, I want you to write it in a way that your family can get excited about. So they know what to do with it. They know how to not just read the value, but they know what it looks like to do the value. They know when they're doing it right, and they also know when they're doing it wrong. So for my family, we said that one of our family values is love is a verb. The reason we say that is because we live in a culture that love is a feeling. Love is the butterflies in your stomach when you like somebody. But for us, we think that love is something much deeper. Jesus said it like this. He said that there's no greater love than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. Jesus didn't talk about a feeling because the cross didn't feel very good. It actually was incredibly painful. But it was the greatest act of love the world has ever seen. And I want our kids to know that love isn't a feeling, it's a verb, it's action, it's something you do. So what is yours? Another one for us is to honor always. Honor was that key word. And we want them to honor always, because always is not just when you feel like honoring, it's when someone's mean to you or rude to you. What do? Well, you show honor. When mom and dad ask you to do something that you don't want to do, we want you to do it. We want you to show honor. When your boss one day asks you to do something that you don't want to do, we want you to show honor. We want you to honor always. So what are those words that just come off that page and they just come alive inside of you as you do it? And what are the things that as you engage with it and as you write those phrases, what gets you excited as a family? And I want you to help together to write those key phrases in a way that's sticky, in a way that's fun and engaging and it's easy to use. So we're going to determine honestly what we currently value. We're going to, as a family, we're going to pray through this worksheet. We're going to narrow it down to 5 or 7 words and we're going to write a sticky phrase. Next, what we want to do is we want to communicate them. How are you going to make it visible? And I want to challenge you. The best churches, the best companies, they have their values on a wall somewhere, and a wall that everyone walks through. It is hard not to notice them on a daily basis. And I want to encourage you to communicate those values. I want you to post them on your wall, or maybe it's on a window or somewhere in your kitchen, a place where you naturally gather on a regular basis that's highly visible and easy for them to know what to do with them. So let's review a little bit. Healthy families never happen by accident. They happen on purpose. And the health of your family is a combination of what you create and allow. But the number one thing that's going to shape the health of your families is your values. So we're going to define them in some sticky, easy to use phrases, and then we're going to communicate them. And in our next podcast, we're going to talk about how do we instill these values deep into our families? How do we then evaluate them and adjust them based on whether they're working or not working? Maybe they need to be rephrased, or maybe you just need a deeper word. And we're going to talk about that in our next podcast. So what do I want you to do? I want you to download the worksheet, and you can either print it off or just use a notebook and work through this worksheet together. And I want you to go to our Mission Family Facebook group, and I want you to post those values so you can share your ideas with other people. And if you need some help with the inspiration, maybe reading some of the other family values on the Facebook group might really help you articulate some key phrases for you. And we want to provide some additional resources on that Facebook page. Why? Because healthy families never happen by accident. They happen on purpose.